podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. Welcome to Lent, dear friends. We're happy to have you along with us for this Lenten series. Each week, we're going to be talking about a different aspect of prayer, fasting, or almsgiving. So the first 2 weeks, we're going to talk about prayer, and specifically, we're going to talk about the experience of desolation. So this week, we're going to share a little bit about our own experiences of desolation, and then next week, we'll talk about Mother Teresa and her experience of desolation and things that we found helpful for when we're in times of desolation. After that, 2 weeks of fasting and 2 weeks of almsgiving. And we hope you'll stick with us throughout this series. And please know that we are praying for you to have a blessed Lent. God bless you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to In the Thicket Lenten series of champions.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was a trumpets moment.
That was a trumpet moment. That's funny. I'm not really sure where that came from. But anyways, welcome to everybody. Welcome to Lent. My name is Erin Kinsella, and I am joined by the lovely
Rachel D'Souza.
and the other lovely
Nicole Richard Williams.
That's right. Yes.
Hi, guys.
And just in case you don't know, we have a fourth secret prayer partner for the podcast, and she's praying for us. She is feeling ill today, so she's offering that up in a particular way for this recording. So it's going to be fire.
So you can pray for her too. You're the secret prayer person who's praying for you. You can pray for her as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So many secret prayers.
Exactly.
It's like
this
prayer
is
inception situation.
Prayer inception, like because God is outside of time. So as we speak, the future prayers of somebody are healing her right now.
There we go.
That's amazing.
This is very convenient.
Anyway,
Okay.
Okay. So just to let you guys know what we're doing for Lent. Yes. So for Lent, we wanted to have, because a lot of people are not so much on social media or taking time for, more quiet and reflection and things like that. So we wanted to do something that might be helpful for that.
Yeah.
For the just quiet being with the Lord. So we're going to look each week. So the first 2 weeks we're going to talk about prayer. The first part of each of the kind of prayer, fasting, almsgiving is going to be us sharing our experiences about a part of that thing, like prayer. We're going to talk today about desolation, the experience of desolation. And then kind of the second part of that will be us sharing about a saint exemplar and their experience with desolation. And so then we'll do that for fasting, and then we'll do that we'll do that for prayer first, and then fasting. And then the last 2 weeks will be on almsgiving. So we're excited to have you along with the ride. And Rachel's going to start us out by a Lenten story.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really, it's just a little funny thing that happened on the weekend. I was studying at a friend's house, and we were like, at the end of the day, we're eating, and we were listening to like on a wireless speaker that my parents gave me for Christmas, which is like the bomb. It's such a good wireless speaker. So we were listening to kind of a throwback early 2000s playlist. And in the middle, we were having these intense, like theological conversations. And then like in the middle, one of my friends goes like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't heard this song in such a long time." And it was Sting, Desert Rose. And I was like, and today I thought like, oh, that's a fun, appropriate, like beginning of a Lent song, Yeah. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. It's a real unique one.
I like that. Actually, I cannot recall the song at this moment, but I really like the image of the desert rose as being a Lenten image, beauty and growth in the midst of the desert.
Right. Right. All I can picture in my head is Kiss from a Rose is Seal standing with the wind going.
Different song. Different song.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of the soundtrack to Tarzan. So
none of this. It's not
excellent. So none of it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, we're going to share, what we are doing for prayer. So like Lent, prayer, fasting, almsgiving. So I am very curious. We have not actually talked about this prior to recording. So I'm curious to hear, what are you guys doing for the prayer part of praying during Lent?
How are you praying this Lent?
Feels. I can start.
Yeah.
So Nathan's my husband. We've been going to a Byzantine church for the last like 6 months ish, and it's something we both love the Novus Ordo. We both that's how we've been raised in. That's what has nurtured us our whole lives. But Nathan, just in the last, 5 or 6, probably actually more, like I'm thinking almost 10 years, he just kind of like randomly went to a Byzantine liturgy one time because he wanted to see what it was like. And he studied theology. So he was like, I better, see what this is like.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kind of fell in love with it. He just loves it. And so so it's been sort of off and on something that he has been part of. And so anyway, sorry that this is like a long story for this, but anyways, I'm going to continue the long story. So we got married in the Byzantine rite, and we have been blessed to find a Romanian Greek Catholic community here in Nashville that we've been a part of, and it's been really beautiful. And for me, it's been like it's all kind of new. I was familiar with like the Ukrainian Catholic rite a little bit because I'm from Winnipeg and there's lots of Ukrainian Catholics there. But this is, it's neat to actually attend. So part of what they're doing during Lent is like a Friday evening prayer service. And so
nice.
Lent in the Byzantine rite actually starts, it kind of, you fade into Lent. So this is like yesterday, Monday was the first day of like real fasting.
Right.
But before that we faded out. So we kind of faded out meat and then sheet and dairy. And now it's like Lent. So for this Friday, I think is the first prayer service. So I'm excited to do that.
That's cool.
As kind of like a formal prayer part of Lent, that's regular.
That's like Septuagesima is this thing. I saw it all over Instagram this year, which is a thing that used to be in the Catholic tradition, is like the time from what is it, Candlemas until Lent, where it's like the pre-Lent, right? So
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Where you're preparing for Lent, which is good because I feel like in many years past, like Lent has always snuck up on me where all of a sudden I'm like, what? It's Ash Wednesday? Shoot, what am I giving up for Lent? Where this is like, you're warned by that Lent is coming because all of a sudden you're not supposed to eat meat anymore. And then you're not supposed to eat dairy. And then you're like, okay, now it's Lent. Like you were prepared.
And then for Latin, right, people were like, well, that's basically Lent though. So
so you're already doing Lent.
Before
Lent.
I know. What do you mean you're phasing in? What else? I
know. I'll share more about the fasting in our fasting.
Okay, good.
But on a personal level for prayer, I'm hoping I want to continue something that I've started in the last month, which is like praying throughout my day more, because I have a tendency to kind of just work, like go from task to task and just kind of like try to work hard at it and be like, okay, but I got to do the next task. Okay, and I finish that one. I got to go to the next one. And I've been trying to actually take breaks in between tasks and take literally just like 1 minute or 2 minutes to just like go and sit in a different chair and like do a decade of the rosary or read a little bit of scripture or do a bit of the Chapel of Divine Mercy or something like that.
Yeah.
And it has been incredibly fruitful in just helping me to live into being at peace, which is my word of the year. And so, and it's easier for me when I'm kind of relaxed and not as stressed. It's harder for me to go and take those moments of prayer when I'm feeling anxious. So I'm hoping to just kind of continue that with some more like intentionality during Lent. So that's me. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, Rach.
Me. So I did the sneak up thing did happen to me. I was like, oh gosh, it's Ash Wednesday. I don't know what am I gonna do. And but you know what? Actually, I feel really grateful because yesterday I had some ideas and thoughts, and then today I really honestly felt very affirmed in a few things. I was like, I think this really isn't just something because I hate that when you just kind of make stuff up.
Oh, just gonna give up sugar. Okay.
It's just like, so this time I was like, no, it was the back of my mind. I kept thinking about it. So I found this, I found this reflection book that my dad had given us like a few years ago, which is a Word on Fire sort of Lenten gospel reflections book. And I didn't use it. I forgot about it. I didn't use it. And it's old. It's from the year 2020 or 20. Yeah, I think 2020. And so I was like, it's not usable. But then I realized, oh no, wait a second. The cycle of readings comes back around and it's like
fun.
Same as this year. So I was like, this is great. So I just figured this out a couple weeks ago and I was like, oh, I should use this during Lent. And then I forgot about it again. Yesterday, I remembered again, and I was like, okay, that is an idea. So cool. I'm going to use that book. But my goal for prayer is, so I'm the opposite of Unical, where I'm like, I'm not a task kind of person. I'm like a river. I flow through my day. Only God knows which way we're going to go. So, it's really I'm like, I can chill with that, but it's not always great. So I was like, I need to I talk to the Lord constantly all the time, all day, because that's the only way I survive. But I also was like, I wasn't my word of the year, but it was sort of the Lord sort of has like been very clear that I need to slow down a little bit. So yeah, so I'm trying to do 15 minutes a day of just like at any time in the day, 15 minutes of time where I carve it out and I just sit with the Lord. And I'm not even doing it where I was like, have to do it in the morning or the evening, because normally that's helpful to people. And I just know that I will fail at that. So my constant is that it must get done. So if it hasn't gotten done all day, then it's at the end of the day. Otherwise, I'm going to try to listen to the Holy Spirit. And there's a kind of a time in my day where I'm like, this is a good time. Then I will take that time. But 15 minutes every day through the whole of Lent. And yeah, using this Word on Fire gospel reflections book thing to help me. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
Sweet.
Erin?
Yeah. So I there's an account on Instagram called Catholicism, which is awesome. Anyways, but it's really fun. Like it's one of those things where he just has like funny Catholic memes, which are, give me a little chuckle. But there's also a part of it, which I don't even know. I think it's maybe like it's something that he invites people to, is medieval grind set, like into this medieval grind set, which is like, I mean, basically, if you're thinking about how Catholics lived in medieval times, of just like ora et labora, like you focus, like smaller communities, there's like, you just pay attention to what the Lord has in front of you. Like there's no social media, there's no like whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's like, yeah, the duty of the moment, all those kind of things. But so for me, I think, so for prayer stuff, I just want to allow myself to be less distractible, or to like seek distraction less, or to, like instead of in the evening, instead of, I don't know, watching an episode of whatever, Stranger Things, while I'm doing diamond painting, I can listen to a podcast that's on, that has something to do with God. Or I can just take a few small, like I'm not going to look at, I just want to detach a little bit. So I'm not going to look at the news. I'm not going to look at the stuff that's happening in the world, because I don't need to, because the Lord will make it clear if there's something that I need to know, like the apocalypse is happening. Like if that's happening, there will be sirens everywhere. It'll be unmistakable. So aside from that, I just really don't need to know it. I just want to, it's kind of like, kind of like you're talking about, Nicole, of just finding those, like just having just little pockets like that are, and I mean, my days are often like slow, like either I'm kind of doing something with my family, or I'm like doing a lot of stuff around the house and I'm just home, so it actually, that I find it's way more of a temptation to head into distractions than it is if you have a schedule and you're out and about and you're, doing stuff like, because then it just is kind of almost like, okay, now I sit and I pray or whatever. But like for me, I'm like, oh, well, I get up in the morning and I'm going to go to mass today. And that's the only thing that I have on my schedule today. So then, I can pray or I can do this, or I can pray later. So it just gets easier to do things that are not actually like beneficial for my relationship with the Lord. So
it's so funny. I was thinking like, if you're just praying, like the Lord may not tell you that the apocalypse is happening. If you're just praying and then like, everything just bursts into flame, you'll just go straight to heaven. You know what I mean? Like you'll be like in a great raptured,
because that's what we.
I think there's a book about that.
I think maybe. Okay, so listen. So here's the topic for today. We're gonna chat about this for a few minutes. So you may, dear listener, if you are listening, you may have experienced something called consolation and something called desolation. We're going to talk about desolation today, but just wanted to read this from St. Ignatius. So St. Ignatius had all of these experiences, which helped him to kind of make this framework for how the soul works, right? Like the things that the soul experiences that help us propel us towards God or take us away from God, or how we can respond in those times. So consolation is, he says, it's this: when some interior movement of the soul is caused, through which the soul comes to be inflamed with love of its creator and Lord, and when it can, in consequence, love no created thing on the face of the earth in itself, but in the creator of them all. So basically, it's when one of those times when it feels like your soul is just like drawn up and there's like just this goodness and this beauty. It's not like happiness, but it's like this intense love of the Lord, and it's like just soul filling and good, so that's consolation. And so then kind of the opposite of that, desolation. So he says desolation is the contrary of the above, such as darkness of soul, disturbance in it, movement to things low and earthly, the unquiet of different agitations and temptations, moving to want of confidence, without hope, without love, when one finds oneself all lazy, tepid, sad, and if as if separated from his creator and Lord. So basically, that gives you a really lovely picture of desolation and what that is like, Yeah, so
And
we're
if
going to
you're
talk
like
about
me,
that.
you're like, can relate,
Yeah, I was like,
right?
that sounds familiar.
Relate. Yes. And I mean, I can like,
to both.
I'll just
but
share a
yeah.
little bit about my experience of this, and then I want to hear from you guys what
Yeah.
your experience of this has been. But there've been a few times in my life when there have been like, so when I was with a religious order and I was discerning for a little while, there was a period of about 8 months where I was in this time of really intense desolation, like intense desolation that was like, when you hear a song that usually kind of lifts your heart to the Lord and just like strikes, it just hits in that way that like makes you feel close to the Lord. It was like that and everything else in my life that kind of, beautiful sunsets or songs or particular people or anything like that that would normally like inflame my heart or would be like an experience of consolation or having that closeness with the Lord was totally gone. And it was like, so like when he says in the definition, um like darkness of soul, that's what it was. It
Yeah.
felt like a darkness in my soul. And so there've been like a couple of more intense times like that. But then also more recently, I just realized when I was talking to my spiritual director and I'm like talking to her about prayer and things, and she's like, "Oh, you're in a time of desolation." And I almost wanted to say like, no, like I'm not, because it's not that. Like I'm not,
Right.
like I'm not, doesn't feel like a darkness of soul. But then I was like, oh yeah, but it also
All this other stuff.
includes, yeah, like that the unquiet of different agitations and temptations. So like movement to things low and earthly. Like, oh yes, that's 100%
Yeah.
like part of what I've been feeling recently is just like, yeah, just not even drawn to the things of God in some ways,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
and that's also desolation. And I always forget that that's an experience
Yeah.
of desolation.
Right.
And then I'm just like, oh, I'm terrible. I'm like, oh no, actually that's
Yeah.
the evil
Wait a
one,
second.
the bad
Yeah.
spirit. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How about
Yep,
you guys?
totally.
What's your experience of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard for me because like there's desolation and it's hard for me to actually separate desolation from like emotional like drama, interior drama, you know what I mean? And maybe they're not really separate. I mean, it doesn't sound
Right.
like they are. It sounds like, yeah, desolation engages your emotions in a particular kind of way. Um, but yeah, so I think for me, because I can have very strong emotions, like I'm a kind of person who doesn't necessarily like take my emotions out on people or things or like express them in that way, but I feel them very, 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 very strongly. And so sometimes so sometimes I'm like, I'm just feeling, and it's like, it could be like a physiological thing that's going on, or like, external stuff in my life is difficult. But I think that also can fall into the desolation camp. So like there's dryness. I often, cause similar to you,
Yeah.
Erin, I think I often thought of desolation as equivalent to spiritual dryness.
Right.
That's what it was.
Which is one part of it, right?
Right.
But it's
Exactly.
not, yeah.
Yeah, but this other kind of like where your emotions are, where, essentially the opposite of everything's not bringing you to the Lord, because there's times where I'm sad, like I'm struggling, but I'm still going towards the Lord. Like even my sorrow is drawing me to God. Like everything's like automatically drawing me to God. And that I would say it still feels like a consolation to me in those moments. Like, no, but the desolation is like when it's the opposite. Everything is just sort of like drawing me away from the Lord. And I think I'm trying to think of, I think I've been really blessed in that I think oftentimes those things kind of flip flop very close together for me. And that's not the blessing part, but when I'm in desolation, I feel really blessed that I constantly have people around me to help me through it. So I feel very blessed in that it's been a long time since I've had a time of desolation in which there haven't been community members within my family or my friends who have sort of drawn me out of it. And I feel like for me, my desolation consolation hasn't been like, it's 3 months of desolation. It's sort of been like many years of like a particular trial or particular suffering in which I go through experiences of consolation, desolation, like daily,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
one day will be a hard day, one day will be an amazing day. But the
Mm-hmm.
constant in my life has been having the community around me and sort of God always kind of around me to draw me out of my moments of desolation or to help sustain me through my moments of desolation. And what helps is kind of what your spiritual director did for you, Erin, is often when I'm in those moments, I have people in my life that can tell me that can reflect that back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, it sounds like, you're really struggling, especially with hope. I think that's the big tell for me.
Mhm.
Like when I'm just feeling like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's
that's the thing,
struggling
yeah. Because
with
that's
hope.
the like spiritual consolation is like what does he say here? Every movement to like hope, peace, or to what are the three things? Uh hope, faith, and love. That's it.
Mhm.
So are things that move us to hope and faith and love, which is also because even when you're talking about emotions, right? It's true that like there's a difference between like emotions or the little ups and downs and things and spiritual consolation or spiritual desolation, and it has
Mhm.
to do
Mm-hmm.
with like how our soul um is encountering, is perceiving, or like
Mm-hmm.
or the direction that we are in terms of the Lord, like not whether we're going towards sin or not sin, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but how that experience, like how we're experiencing the Lord in that particular thing. But it totally
Mhm.
even makes sense for you with people who can reflect those things back to you, because one of the things that Ignatius says about times of desolation is that we should do more of the things that
Mhm.
we should be doing, like prayer or like hope
Mm-hmm.
or like reaching out for help or for doing those kind of things. Because if the enemy is like, if he's being allowed to, um, to kind of contribute to this sense of desolation and for discouragement and turning us away from the Lord, Ignatius's thought is that like if we're doing the things that we should be doing and we're doing those actually more. So like in a time of
Yeah.
desolation, he would say, if you pray for 10 minutes a day, pray for 15 minutes a day, because
Yeah.
instead of like succumbing to discouragement or whatever, that
Right.
actually it's going to be doing the opposite and like
Mm-hmm.
be
Like leading you
solidifying
close.
Drawing you
Yeah.
closer.
leading you
Yeah. Yeah.
closer to
Mm-hmm.
God, and the enemy doesn't want that. So then the time of
Yeah.
desolation is
It's great.
likely to end sooner,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh,
Right.
Actually, and because yeah, I want to hear about Nicole, your
Nicole, yeah.
experience also, but I just don't want to lose this thought, which is just that
Mhm.
I think, what's helped me in times of desolation in that context has been also just recognize, especially the emotion side of things, just
Mhm.
to own the emotions and be like, yeah, I am sad. This is really hard. And just say that out loud and realize like, oh, but it doesn't destroy me. The sadness isn't destroying
Yeah.
me. This hard thing, like God is still
Mm-hmm.
with me. And then I can like choose hope even in the sadness and be like, okay, or people
Mhm.
can help me choose hope. And I think there was a time in my life where I was like afraid of admitting that like I'm in a time of desolation or I
Mm-hmm.
have these difficult things that are weighing on me. And now it's like a very freeing thing when I'm in that time just to like own it and be like, yeah, so I still love God. God still loves me.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Like that hasn't changed. And to like remind
Mm-hmm.
myself that like, even though I'm feeling these hard things, and this is where for me, the emotions it's different, but a lot of times I think my spiritual desolation can come from being
Mm-hmm.
afraid of my emotional weaknesses and just being like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having this response to this situation. It's okay. I'm choosing not to lose hope here. I'm
Mhm.
choosing to believe that God is with me and to know in my heart, even if I don't feel it, that
See,
he's
that's
with me,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
you
Ignatius
know?
Yeah.
says we should do that too. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
It
Mm-hmm.
helps. It's so
It
helpful,
does, yeah. How
you
about
know?
you, Nicole? How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I do experience desolations and consolations in sort of an up and down level. And of course there's like the examine, which I have not prayed for a while. I used to. But that's really helpful in kind of discerning those movements. Um, but I think, a big desolation, and I've shared more about this in another episode, was just while I was dating my husband. And we started dating during the pandemic. I also started dating him after two other kind of back-to-back relationships that I was processing. So there was just like a lot going on. And I also was struggling with some like mental health stuff, some anxiety and kind of OCD thought patterns and just different things that were, it was just like a lot. And so there was the desolation that was there was kind of related to all of those factors, I think. And that's another thing is like the desolation and consolation, they don't come out of a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
They're related to I would say there's a correlation between our desolation and consolation and the things that are happening in our lives. However, it's not totally causal, right? There's some other the Lord can give us experiences of consolation in a time where the external things are desolate. And I've experienced that too. And so I think it's just the key thing that was helpful for me in those times is like, don't make a decision don't make any big decisions when you're in a period of desolation. You make those big decisions when you're in a time of consolation, which is hard. I was in a period of desolation for like 2 years dating Nathan and really wanted to make a decision and figure out if he's the one to marry or not. And it was like the Lord was saying, no, it's not time to make that decision. And I was like permitting this desolation for all this time. And I was doing things like therapy and just different things to help me grow and heal. So I think that, and also like that time of desolation was driving me to prayer. I was praying every day and crying every day for like really crying for a long time. But then, there was sort of a grace when that lifted, and there was this period of really strong consolation where I felt like the Lord was like, okay, now you can make a decision. Now you can decide, discern sort of a more bigger decision, in this relationship. But so just that desolation of, it wasn't that the prayer was dry. It's just, I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted at the time that I wanted. I wasn't getting the healing that I wanted in the time that I wanted. I wasn't getting the clarity that I wanted in the time that I wanted. And it was so hard to be in that. And it was sometimes I would go and pray and it was like crying and talking to a wall. And yet I knew that somehow it was like only in the silence of God was I at peace. If I didn't go and sit with silent walled Jesus, I was not at peace at all. Whereas if I sat with silent walled Jesus and cried, at least there was something solid, like the wall, at least Jesus, the wall is something solid to lean against, And so, and, and other times of consolation, desolation, it's kind of like, like that, more temptations to being irritable or more temptations. And it's it's like, okay, do I need to eat food right now? Am I hangry? That can be part, or am I, do I need to pray? Have I just been kind of neglecting my prayer today? Or, sometimes it's just these little ups and downs that we can address.
Yeah. Well, and I love the, like we were talking about this actually about wanting to do an episode, like a whole episode on desolation with like a Jesuit who knows, St. Ignatius really well. So we can talk about these things more in depth, but yeah, I think those basic things, that we've all kind of had those experiences of where our soul has felt lazy, tepid, sad, and have separated from our Creator and Lord. But we're going to talk, we're going to come back to you next week. We're going to talk about Mother Teresa, who you probably know had a really intense and prolonged experience of desolation. So we're going to chat a little bit about her, and then we're going to chat a little bit about some of the things from her story or from our own lives that we found helpful in times of desolation. So we are hoping and praying that you're going to join us next week, so we don't just leave you in a depressed
desolation, Lent, goodbye.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the other part about desolation, though, that's important is like it is part of this side of heaven, the journey this side of heaven, that it's not like Nicole said, it's not like necessarily causal from the events in our life, but it's just kind of a part of our purification and our growing in faith. So, the positive side of the reality of desolation is that it is an opportunity. There are opportunities those times to draw nearer to God. So
Well, and in particular for Lent, it's like that image of a desert. And if you have something growing in the desert, it's actually the times like when it's deprived of water a little bit. Like if you deprive a plant of water a little bit, its roots will actually grow deeper so that in a time of real scorching sun, that plant will not die and will be will survive and thrive because its roots go deep. So
it's true. Like aloe vera plants, if you just sort of like water them every day or every week, they don't really grow that much because they're like, cool, I'm getting lots of water. But if you let it completely dry out, soil dries out, plant is dying, and then you like inundate it with water, that's what actually makes those plants grow.
See, everybody who's listening who has an aloe vera plant is going to be so glad they tuned into this episode now. If you have sunburns in the summer, you are going to be just so blessed by
it's true.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, 3 months to grow that plant.
That's right. Exactly. Before we sign off for today, I just wanted to do a shout out to Tony on Instagram. Tony, he shared one of our promo things and said it's a great way to end or start his week by listening to In the Thick. And we're just really grateful. It was very sweet. We're really happy that you tune in. Yeah,
totally.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure talking at you today. And we hope that you'll join us next week to talk about Mother Teresa. God bless you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.